Anyways, Nichole works for West Ada School District and has been involved in teaching Love and Logic in churches as well as via the school system. And so she has been in a variety of settings. And when Debbie got a hold of her, and Debbie's not feeling well, so she's not here tonight. So that's why she asked me to kind of kick it off. But it's a privilege to have you tonight. And thank you for giving us this week and next week. And they're kind of solo weeks to some degree as far as content.
It's going to be a quick overview.
Yeah, so some people had said, well, is it if I come one, do I need to come the next? Is it the same thing repeated? And the answer is no.
It will be added on. We'll discuss tools this week and tools next week.
So anyway, so we hope that you're able to come both weeks, and feel free to invite anybody you want next week because it will be fresh new materials. But thank you very much, and I just want to pray for you as we get started.
Yeah,
so,
that'd be great.
Father, I just thank you for Nichole and her commitments to your family, your kingdom, and to helping parents succeed at this topic of parenting. And so, Lord, just thank you for her sacrifice tonight to be with us, and I pray your anointing over her tonight as she shares with us. And I thank you for her expertise in helping families raise their kids well. And so Lord, tonight, will you just bless she and Brent as they carry a burden for all the pastors on our district, and some of which are in the hospital right now because of different things. And I just pray that you will encourage them and lift them up as they seek to make a difference in our entire district, but also in the West Ada School District as Nichole pours into students and parents there. So Lord, just thank you for the gifts you've given her, and thank you for her willingness to share with us tonight. So open our hearts and minds to what we'll hear tonight and help us to see how they may be practical in our own lives. We pray in Christ's name, amen. Let's welcome her.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Ed. I was just hoping you wouldn't share any personal stories.
I could have.
So we just love Ed and Debbie. We're just so excited that they're here with you guys now. So yes, like Ed said, I am a school counselor in West Ada School District, and I was fortunate about, let's see, my oldest is now 21, so 20 years ago I was introduced to Love and Logic when my oldest was 1, and I have 3 daughters, now 21, 19, and almost 17. So it's been fun to start at the beginning and watch the kids through Love and Logic, and then it's been fun to watch them babysit and then go, hey Mom, what was that phrase you used to always say to us, and how did you do these choices? And it's just been really fun to see them adapt or use those in different situations already as teenagers. But Love, how many of you are familiar with Love and Logic? Okay, so heard about it, or have you taken any classes? Just kind of heard about it?
That I've read through Love and Logic for early childhood.
Yeah, good. How about you guys?
I can't remember if we took
I think it was a class.
It would have been like 10 years ago.
Yeah, good. Love and Logic is, I want to start out by saying, I'm not a parenting expert. I'm just a parent, just like you guys. Love and Logic is not the only way to parent, but definitely it has some helpful tools that I always say, we all have parenting tool belts, right? So when there's a tool, I'm going to add that to my tool belt, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to experiment with it. Our kids are very different. And so you tweak tools in different ways. And so Love and Logic just gave me the tools when I was just a young mom. And I look back now, and I thank God for Love and Logic tools, because now I can see if I didn't have those tools, what type of a parent I would have been. And I don't know what my relationship would have been with my kids without it. So to me, I'm very passionate about Love and Logic, but again, I'm not here to sell it to you. I'm here to present the tools to you, and then you take those tools home and you experiment with it. That's all I'm asking. Just experiment, try it out, come back, let us know if it worked or didn't work, and we kind of work through that. But again, this is not something that is a substitute for counseling. You know, I know in life there are a lot of difficult things happening, and life throws us a lot of curveballs. And so again, these are just tools. It's not the only parenting strategy, and it's not to substitute any needed help that a family needs. Okay, so I just wanted to kind of clarify that. But my main question that I usually ask parents is, what is your ultimate goal for you and your kids? When you think about it, we have 18 years with our kids, right, in our home. But think, we've got decades with our kids after that 18 years. So when you think of that whole span, what is your ultimate goal in that? What do you want for you and your kids in the future?
Did you want Chris to go first?
No, just anyone. I know it's a big question, but that's kind of what we want to look at. Right now, as parents, we kind of look in the moment, right? We're like, oh, this one issue, this this power struggle that I'm going with my 3-year-old or my teenager who talks back to me all the time. But let's look at the big goal, the whole line. What is it that you want for you and your kids?
Well, I'm a grandparent.
Okay, or a grandparent.
My goals are met with my kids. They're on their own. But my issue is, well, I don't know if it's an issue. It's just hard to understand. I never came from a mixed, what do they call these, mixed families?
Yeah, blended family.
My grandkids are living it, and it's hell sometimes.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, I try to help them, and they look at me like, Mom, you're just, no. Then they get all mad at me, so how can you help somebody if you don't want to listen? So I'm trying to, you tell me some tactful ways, and I'll try to
Well, I'm going to give you some tools, and you're going to try them out. How about that?
Okay.
Okay, and then you can decide for yourself what you like. Yeah.
We want our children to be self-controlled, responsible adults that are able to engage healthily with other people.
Right, and with you, how do you want that to look? What's your goal in your relationship?
Thinking right now that would hopefully influence forward is we want to diffuse the tensions or the fighting. I want us to always, as much as possible, feel like we're on the same side of things versus opposite,
so you want
conflicting
you want to
sides.
have a good relationship, right? And would you say that that's what we all want?
I know how to do that.
Is we want to have a good relationship with our kids, not just when they're little or not just when they get out of the adolescence, but we want to have a lifelong relationship with our kids, right? And so if we keep that in mind, I think you will understand the tools that we use, that the goal is ultimately that we have a great relationship, not just seasons, but throughout our lifetime. I mean, who gets to decide what happens to us at the end of our lives? Or where we go, right? Or where we stay, where we live. So we want to have this wonderful relationship that continues on. That's why we have kids, right? So parenting is kind of like a funnel, and I kind of put kind of a funnel shape up here. So our kids start, they're infants, right? And we have 18 years with them, okay? And the goal is that when they're infant, basically we have a lot of control over our little ones, right? We have full control, high control over what they eat, what they wear, where they go, all of that. And they don't have much freedom, okay? Their freedom is very limited. But then parenting, our goal should be to expand that, okay? So it should grow out so that we have little control or no control up here, okay? And then what happens to the freedom? And it's not just freedom alone, it's responsibility goes along with freedom, right? That goes up, right? So as they get older, we give up more control and we give them more freedom. with responsibility. Now, have you seen homes that have given a lot of freedom and no responsibility? You know what that looks like?
We've heard rumors.
Yes. Have you seen homes with a lot of responsibility and no freedom?
Yeah, they came
A
over
lot
to
of,
our house.
lot of resentment there, okay? And again, it's kind of scary when you think, okay, no control. But even though we have little or no control, we have the greatest influence, okay? So even though we don't have control, like ultimately, those kids can do whatever they want, right? Like I have 2 college students. I have no idea what they're doing right now, right? I have no control, but I still have influence, okay? And how do I still have influence? How do I have influence and control at this age? There's only one thing I got with my girls. Any guesses? A
Money.
relationship.
Money.
That always helps too. But I've given them control of their own finances, right? So I've taken control off of that too. So relationship, that's my only tool that I have. And so when we look at these love and logic tools, that's what our aim is that we keep that relationship with our kids and yet still be a firm, loving authority figure. And I believe that's what love and logic shows us. The first thing we need to do is we need to think about, how do kids learn? There's 2 ways that kids learn, just like we learn. One is example, okay, and experience, the 2 E's. Okay, example, they're looking at the adults in their lives and how did they respond to conflict? How do they treat their neighbors? How do they respond to traffic? How do they live out their faith? How do they deal with struggles, successes, failures? How do they talk about people in their home? It's a little daunting when you think about the modeling that takes place with our kids, but they're watching and they see how we live our lives, they see how others live their lives, and that's how they learn. The other one is experience, okay? So what they experience in life is going to teach them a lot. They're gonna learn a lot. So our kids are gonna need to experience struggle. They're gonna have to experience disappointment. They're gonna experience all kinds of things that life throws at them, right? And so they need to have lots and lots of practice of that. And love and logic parents look at mistakes and struggles as learning opportunities. And love and logic parents always want their kids to make as many mistakes as possible when they're young, because that's when the price tag is low. So it's kind of a mind shift, okay? So instead of going to the grocery store and going, oh, I hope these kids behave, it's like looking at it like, if they don't behave, this is a great learning opportunity, okay? Keeps you in check as well, right? So mistakes are learning opportunities, okay? And mistakes are okay. And that really is a different mindset. If they never experience struggle, they will never know how to walk through it. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So the type of parent that we choose to be determines what our kids learn. So go ahead and take out the handout that says the 3 types of parents. Okay? And you may have heard of some of these types of parents.
Not sharing.
And good example, good example. So you'll see that there are helicopter parents, drill sergeant parents, and consultant parents, okay? And you may know right away who you are. Again, they are not bad parents. We're all parents that love our kids, right? And oftentimes we take on a parenting role that how we were parented, or we do the total opposite of what our parents were. We swing the pendulum to the other side. But let's just kind of look at these different types of parents. So we have the helicopters, the other ones that hover, rescue, and protect. We see a lot of those in elementary schools. But basically, again, these are parents that love their kids, trying to help them out. But the unstated message they are sending is saying, you are fragile, you can't make it without me, you need me to run interference, you need me to protect you, you can't make it without me. Okay, this is not what the parent is saying, this is just what the action is stating. Okay, it's an unstated message. So you have to ask your question, if you're a helicopter parent, how many opportunities do these kids get to think for themselves? Okay, remember they need practice in order to know how to handle things in life. What do these kids do when someone doesn't solve their problem? And how does this create a sense of entitlement? Okay. Any thoughts on that one? Anyone know that that's kind of you? No helicopters in here.
No.
For my
Maybe
first
Dad a little bit. Yeah, he's got girls.
with my daughter.
Yeah, I was gonna say with girls, daddy and daughters. Yeah.
First child, Katie.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But I think Jim Fay's quotes there kind of hit the nail on the head. He says, parents who work hard to make sure their kids are happy raise kids who don't have the slightest idea how to make themselves happy. And parents who work hard to keep their kids from frustration raise kids who can't stand frustration and turn to destructive behaviors. So I know that sounds really extreme, but again, when kids are young, they need to have these practices. In order to cope with life, they need to have these practices, and so that we can guide them through it, okay? Rather than protect them the whole way, rescue them from consequences, and then they get out on their own. And you can kind of see how young adults could really spin out, okay? Drill sergeants, do it now or else. Is that anyone in here? Because that would be me.
I've done that a couple
Yes,
times.
yeah. So that's my default for sure, it's drill sergeant. That's how my mom was, and that's my tendency too. So the unstated message is, you can't think, I have to do the thinking for you, boss you around, tell you what to do, and you aren't capable of making it in life without me, basically. Someone needs to tell you what to do. So we need to ask, do these kids get much practice at solving problems? No, okay. And what happens when the parent is not around? Who will they listen to? Who would that be?
Whoever speaks out.
Yeah. And who are they with in school and in the neighborhood? Who are they listening to?
Peers.
Peers. Yeah.
Who know everything.
Yeah, exactly. And then what does this style do for a relationship? If you had a drill sergeant parent, how's that relationship? Okay.
It's minimal.
It's minimal, correct. I had a dad say, well, when my dad said jump, I said how high, and that's how kids should be, and da-da-da. And I said, I think so too. I wish that were the case. You could just tell a kid to do something and they would do it. But it just doesn't seem to work that way anymore. And he says, well, it should be, and da-da-da. And then I said, so how is your relationship with your dad today? Oh, we don't even talk to each other. We can't even stand each other. And I just like, you just made my point. It's like, remember, your whole goal is that you have a lifelong relationship with your kids. All right, consultants. This is where we're going with love and logic. Consultants are always there to give advice and let the child make the decision, with the idea that they will let the child make as many mistakes as possible when the price tag is affordable. Okay? The unstated message is, you best do your own thinking because the quality of your life has a lot to do with your decisions. Okay? You are capable of making good choices. You can handle obstacles in life. Okay? It's really, we're sending them an empowering message by handing those things back to them. So we take good care of ourselves in front of our kids. by using several different tools. And we're gonna be talking about 6 tools. Again, this is gonna be speed round. Again, this is a class I do for 6 weeks, 2 hours a week. So we're gonna do kind of a quick overview and then just kind of wet your whistle, maybe pick up a book or take another class or something. So one is we use lots and lots of empathy and let the consequences do the teaching. We're gonna talk about the importance of using empathy versus anger. They listen and use questions rather than lectures or commands. They use one-liners to neutralize arguments. We're going to talk about that today. We tell kids that what we're going to do instead of tell them what to do. And we call those enforceable statements. We share control by using choices, and we help kids use problem-solving steps, and we use little words and a lot of actions. Okay? So today we're going to just quickly review empathy. We're going to look at choices, and we're going to look at one-liners. So that will get you started to do some experimenting this week. Come back and see how those go, and we'll pick up a few more. Okay, any questions at this stage? Okay, kind of going quick, but we're doing good. Okay, so we're going to start first with empathy. So go ahead and look at that handout with empathy. Okay. Now this is a foundational tool. So it has to start with empathy. The other tools will not be effective if you don't start with empathy. Okay, so this is really important. It sounds really easy, but it's really difficult to do. Because when your kids make a mistake, or they really make you angry, how easy is it to use empathy? It's like polar opposite of what you feel like you need to do, okay? And Love and Logic doesn't try to make it really complicated. They just say have one empathetic statement that you can use over and over. So if you just want one statement, you just use it over and over. But basically, what empathy does, it opens the mind to learn, okay? We often wonder, why doesn't this kid learn when I'm sitting there yelling at him or pointing the finger, like, why can't you figure this out? You shouldn't be doing it, right? Why are they not thinking? Well, because anytime, like we know, if we've been verbally criticized, we all go in fight or flight, right? It goes into brainstem mode. So we're not even thinking of what that person's saying. We're going, how do I defend myself? Who can I blame? How do I get out of the situation? How do I run away, right? You're thinking of your exit strategy. Kids do the same thing. So when we respond in anger, they're not thinking about what you're saying because you have a great lecture all planned out. Why can't they figure this out, right? They're not thinking about that. So we start with empathy, and we keep them in the frontal cortex where they can think. So it keeps their mind open, okay? It also helps the child focus on the problem rather than the parent being angry, okay? And we want the child to own the problem. As soon as we get angry, we own the problem, okay? And then the adult sees more cooperation, less revenge. The child can learn and take responsibility instead of be resentful. So some examples here. So it's as simple as uh-oh. So when my kids were really little, we just said uh-oh, and then we had a little song. Love and Logic does a little song like uh-oh, little bedroom time coming up, so sad, and then you kind of take them. So if anyone have little ones? Okay, so my firstborn, I started at 1, because she was 1 when I learned. My third daughter, I started at 8 months, and I used the uh-oh song, and it actually, it worked. Their receptive language is developed much more than their expressive language. So they're smart. They're really smart. So anyway, it's like uh-oh, or how sad, what a bummer. Oh, it could be just, oh man, it just whatever seems to fit you. You definitely want it to be genuine. You don't want it to be sarcastic, because that has the opposite effect, Ed.
You can erase that off.
So it has to be genuine, and it can be hard to be genuine if you do it all the time, but basically it's kind of a conditioning that after a while, when you're like, oh, or oh man, they know something's wrong. but you're not getting mad about it. So they're focused on, uh-oh, what did I do wrong? And even as my girls were like in middle school, high school, I'd be in a room of like with people, and I'd say their name and they wouldn't hear me. And I'd go, uh-oh, and all three of them would look at me. It can be really powerful. I said to my friends, watch this. And I go, uh-oh, and they all like went, what? And so it's kind of a conditioning, like uh-oh, that's not a good choice, kind of thing. And so you want to find this week something, an empathetic statement that works for you. It just could be, it doesn't even have to be words. It's just like, whatever fits. So for guys, it may be a little different. They might not want to go, uh-oh, but it could be, oh man. But make it something simple you can repeat, and then also check those nonverbals too, because a lot of times our words don't have much meaning, because 70 to 90% of our communication is our nonverbals. So you're gonna have to check that out too. Okay, so we're gonna watch a couple clips and give you an idea of kind of how this works. Oh, I think I did.
So much pressure in front of you.
Well, I jammed my finger, I can't even feel it. It's like, so I'm struggling with that. Okay, so if you guys are familiar, Jim Fay, Charles Fay are a father-son duo who basically Jim and a friend founded Love and Logic, and now him and his son continue to do Love and Logic together. So this is Charles, and this is kind of an example of how we kind of use, well, I'll just let it explain itself. Be better.
Is there a glare on the TV? Or are you guys okay? Okay.
Look at an example from marriage and see if we can learn anything from that. And I'd like you to imagine this scenario that, well, my wife has just gotten home and she's brought something with her, a traffic ticket. And she's not really happy about it. She's pretty upset. She comes in the door and she says, I got a traffic ticket and I wasn't even going that fast. Now let's see how I handle this, and you can kind of grade me as we go. Okay, would you do that? Yeah, just kind of grade me and see how I do so far, and because this stuff is important, let me tell you. Okay, I got a traffic ticket. It wasn't even my fault. He didn't even catch those other people that are going faster than me. Oh man, that's got to feel awful. I'm sorry that happened. How am I doing so far? Pretty good. Yeah, and like I said, I wasn't even going that fast, and then he didn't even care that I was in a hurry, and I told him that. Oh, yeah, that's got to be awful. Give me a hug. I love you. How am I doing so far? Good. Hey, I'm learning. I'm doing better. Okay, honey, did you match it up? What are you talking about? Well, did you match it up like we talked about before? What are you talking about? Well, remember when we were in the car the other day and I noticed that you were going a little too fast? I said, all you gotta do is you look over there at the speed limit sign and you look at the speedometer and you just match it up. You know, what? See, that's your issue. See, every time I try to help you or try to give you some help with something like this, you get an attitude. See, it's really simple. All you have to do is you look at the speed limit sign, you look at the speedometer, you match the two up. If you're going too fast, you just let off on that pedal on the right and you just, what do? You just match it up. Or if you're going too slow, you push down on that pedal and you just match it up. It's simple. All you have to do is just match it up. Now, how many of you think that I had just through this conversation, improved the level of marital intimacy in our home? How many of you think my wife is going to wrap her arms around me and say, oh, honey, I never thought about it that way, and I'm so lost without you. And I just, oh, thank you. And how many of you think that the next time we're in the car, she's going to drive and keep those two numbers matched up? Do you know anybody who would actually get more tickets and drive faster just to prove a point? Yeah. Now, here's what I don't get, because I'm a guy. I don't get it. Because I just gave her good advice, didn't I? I mean, think about the advice. Is it true and factual? Absolutely. All you have to do is match it up. So why is she so defensive? Why is she so upset? Because she already knows that. And how often do we do that to kids? Where we lecture them or moralize after we give the consequence. And what's the message that it sends? You're not bright enough to learn from this consequence. Now, do kids tend to live up to or down to the expectations we set? What are your thoughts? Yeah, either up to or down to. When I can apply empathy and allow the kid to learn and resist the urge, and it's so hard to resist the urge to lecture them and say, I told you so, or what have you learned from this? What kind of expectation am I sending? You can figure this out. You're a bright kid. When I slip up and I just can't help it, and I lecture and moralize afterwards, what happens? I send, what, a different kind of expectation, don't I? An expectation that says, I just don't think you can figure this out. Which one do you want for your kids? Yeah.
All right,
Do you know that there
any
are
thoughts
natural
on
ways
that?
to overcome ADHD, autism, and other behavioral challenges that
Any thoughts?
If he had a relationship with his kid in the first place, he wouldn't treat him mean. He would have respect them and let them use their own mind. What do you think we should do about this? You know, I mean, seems common sense to me. I
Yeah,
guess.
and sometimes though, when we don't start with empathy and we start with the anger and frustration, we often say things we probably wouldn't say to any other kid. But we do
Don't
say
get angry,
it. But
you're like the adult.
we do say it. But we do say it to our own kids. I realized that when my daughter was with her friend, and how I responded to her friend was way different than I responded to my daughter. I was much harder on my daughter than her friend. So yeah, I'd like to say I'm always kind and respectful to my kids, but I can't say that I always am. I'm gonna just switch this over really quick to a DVD. And we're gonna look at another example, and this one's gonna be Jim Fay. And remember, I started teaching this 20 years ago. So this is about 25 years ago. So you're gonna see, it's gonna be a little old fashioned, the outfits and all. But here's kind of
It's
a
coming back then.
right. The Argyle sweaters and all of that. So we're gonna just look at another, like a kid's example.
I remember one particular year when local PTAs were hiring me quite frequently, and it got so that 1, 2, 3, 4, in that fourth chair right there appeared the same woman night after night. I'd see her one week, I'd see her the next week, I'd see her another week. I finally said, you've been coming to the same speech. I give several different kinds of speeches, but I notice you always come to the same one. She said, sure. I work for a company that knows all about learning theory. And I've learned what we teach other people is you have to have 6 to 8 repetitions on something before it starts to soak in and you really start to make a difference. So she said, I come every chance I can to listen to the same presentation. She said, besides, you taught me how to listen to your audio tapes. So I listened back and forth to work. You taught me the first time you listen for the fun of it, to see that there's hope and help available, right? And then you start listening for specifics. Like, for a while, I'll just listen to how the parents use choices in different kind of ways. Just listen to that same thing, and then I'll shut it off, and then I'll think about it, and then I'll experiment, and then I'll listen again, always listening for that. Then I'll start listening just for how we use the empathy. And then after a while, I'll start listening just for how we set the limits and so on. She said, I am getting so good. You'd be so proud of me. My kids can't even handle me anymore. She said, I am getting so good. Man, you ought to see me. But she says, I think I've got it all down except for one thing, the empathy. I know I should do it. But my kid does something wrong, and before I can open my mouth or even think, out comes my mother. I hear her nagging, angry voice. I said, just like mother, I just hate it. She said, I thought if I heard you one more time, I could get it locked in. She said, don't take it personally if you don't see me next time. But she said, I gotta tell you how good I'm getting. My daughter is in 5th grade. She refuses to bring home her spelling words. Every week it's a battle. Did you bring your word? Well, the teacher forgot to give it. Did you bring your word? Oh, just doesn't happen. And finally, I've listened to your tapes enough, I started to hear your voice in my head. And it rings in my ear now. And it says, quit reminding. Every time you remind, you steal away her opportunity to learn to think for herself. So she said, you'd be impressed. I'm not reminding. She said, quit rescuing. See, you're constantly going in and making it right for the kid, standing between her bad decision and the consequence. Quit doing that. You're stealing from the kid. So she said, I finally got off all my nerve, and I started to pray. Please, I got to keep my mouth shut. Because I heard your voice again, and it said, if you keep your mouth shut, the school will provide the consequence. Then the school will be the bad guy, and you can be the good guy if you provide enough empathy. And she said, so for one solid week, I kept my mouth shut. I am so proud. And the school did their job. They gave her a D on the test. She brought that D home. I heard your voice again. Say, okay, hit her with empathy. Oh no, a D. Oh, that must feel awful. I bet that hurts so bad. And for the first time, instead of her being tough and nasty, she started to bend her shoulders. Oh no. She's really starting to look kind of sad. She's seeing little wrinkles on her forehead. She says, I'm really getting to that kid. And then I say, what are you going to do? And she says, I don't know what I'm going to do. And she said, I had her right in the palm of my hands. I had her right where I needed her. And then I just had to do one more thing. I don't know why, I just had to do one more thing. And you're not going to the party on Friday night. You're staying home. And that kid threw back her shoulder. What do you mean I'm not going to the party? Those are not 5th grade words. Those teachers, they give you a lot harder words than they're supposed to, and they never give you any help. And you raise your hand, and you ask for help, and they never give you any help, and they never give you, so it's not my fault. She said, look at that. I was that close. And I had to blow it. Had to get angry. I had to make threats. I had to do punishment. So I thought, well, what would a good consultant do? What would a good consultant say? When you can't think of anything else, you always say, what are you going to do? So I said, what are you going to do? And she said, I got it. She said, I'm praying for that kid to have the same experience next week. I'm praying to stay out of it. I'm praying she doesn't study. I'm praying she doesn't bring home her words. I'm praying the school gives her a D. And when she comes home with that D, I'm going to give her a heavy dose of empathy, and then I'm going to say, what are you going to do? And when she says, I don't know what I'm going to do, she said, I'm going to say, oh, how sad. And then I'm going to walk off. Has she got it?
Thank you for participating.
Oh, you're welcome.
That's the very last one, so it's good. Do you see a difference in those two responses? Just how the mom responded? how first, with empathy, she was more contemplative and thinking about how she needs to solve this problem. And then the anger and the frustration then creates blame and So that, again, empathy is the tool that we start with always before delivering any tools, and it opens the mind to learn. So we need to get our kids in that mindset to learn. Okay, so this week I want you to pick an empathy statement that fits you and just practice it. It may not feel like you're doing much, but you're practicing it for yourself, so it becomes more of a habit for you versus anger. And in return, it actually helps us not get angry because we're thinking about our empathy statement and we're trying to make that our first response. So it calms us down and it allows our kids to stay in that thinking state. Okay? Doable? Okay. Second tool for our tool belt is we're going to look at choices. Okay? Choices. This is how we can avoid power struggles, okay? And it's kind of fun, actually. It kind of gets this, the child to start thinking about the choices rather than fighting with you. So I remember the first time trying this when my girls were really little, and it was something as simple as like, oh, time for bath, let's all go. And they all were like, no, I don't want to go, we're finishing this, we're doing this, we're doing that. And I was like, oh yeah, I should have done choices. Okay, so then I just went back and I said, do you guys want a lot of bubbles in your bath or just a few? And they go, lots of bubbles, and they ran to the bathroom. And I was like, it can't be that easy. Like, it just can't be. And so we just started putting, when kids were little, just lots of little choices. I mean, how many of you like control? Anybody in here like control? Okay, so that is a natural thing we all want. No pointing fingers or anything. And our kids do too. And so we want to help them feel like they have some control, because remember, they really don't have a lot of control when they're young, right? But they are wanting more control. So how can we give them control that we don't mind giving? So when they were little, it would be like, do you want the red cup or the blue cup? Do you want to pick your do you want to wear these pants or these pants? So if I wanted my kids to match, I'd say, do you want to pick the shirt or the pants? So at least I could get them to match if that was important to me, right? So you find lots of little ways. Are you ready to leave the park now or in 5 minutes? Which either one you don't care, but for them they feel like they get an extra 5 minutes, right? But it feels like they have some control. And Jim Fay's going to talk, it's like a bank account. We do all these little deposits so that when we need to take a withdraw, we raise the odds for cooperation. Okay, so we share that control, which doesn't matter to us, so that when we do have to make decisions, because we as parents sometimes have to make the call and we have to do things right away, we're going to raise the odds for cooperation. Okay? So these are just kind of some of the guidelines for choices. Never give a choice on an issue that might cause a problem for you or anyone else. So again, I don't care if they have the red cup or the blue cup, okay, and it doesn't affect anyone else. For each choice, only give 2 options, each of which will be okay with you. So if you give a choice you are okay with and then you're not okay with, which one do you think the kids are going to pick? The one you don't want, right? So 2 choices, it doesn't matter what they picked, it's okay with you. And why don't I give a whole list of choices? That's too much brain work. Yeah, too much brain work. So just do 2. Now, if the child doesn't decide in 10 seconds, you decide for him or her, okay? How do you think that goes down? Not so good, so you gotta be ready for that, okay? So 11 Logic parents are willing to put the time into it when they're young because it's going to make a difference in the future. Okay, there's some times where you don't have the time to deal with it. I totally get it. There's going to be those moments. But for the most part, this is the training session at a young age. Does everybody have young kids? Do you have
17.
Oh, okay, 17-year-old.
Just turned 17.
Yeah, okay. And then young ones, grandkids that are pretty young. Yeah. And then
4, 6, 8.
yeah, okay, yeah. So So here's an example. This is my classic example. I'm in the Eagle Albertsons. They have those car carts, you know, and I have 2 daughters at the time. I put one in, the other one does not want that one. She wants the other one, so she throws a fit. Now I could easily go, I can't handle this today, scoot over, we'll put her there. But what am I teaching my daughter?
She gets what you throw a fit.
Throw a fit, look what you get, right? So I was like, no, I'm gonna do this. And I said, I'm gonna give you choices. You can sit here on this side, or you can sit up top here. She didn't want either one of them. She wouldn't decide. I pick her up, I put her in. So what does she do? Screaming, hollering all over. So I cut my grocery list really short, and screaming and hollering all the way to the checkout line. And the lady from the bakery, honest, she came over with a cookie because she was so loud she could hear her and the bakery right next to. And so I go, no cookies are allowed. She's fine. And then the clerk, you can see, was uncomfortable. Everybody's just uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable, but I was like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I just did this love and logic training. I gave her choices, and then I made the choice because she wouldn't. And so then I turn, and I'm the farthest booth from the door. And we go to church in Eagle, and you know, I'm sure, and I'm a school counselor in Eagle, right? So my whole reputation, I turn, and the entire Albertsons is looking at me. And I'm going, oh my goodness, just keep a smile on your face, just walk out the door. I see someone from church, and I'm like, hi, how are you? And she's like, how are you? I'm like, fine, and I keep moving. So embarrassing, right? So embarrassing. I get to the car, and I'm so mad. But I stick him in the car seat, but I'm so mad. And I really felt like the Holy Spirit prompted me and said, why are you so mad? You're never gonna see most of those people again. And I had to sit there and go, what was most important in that situation is what I taught my daughter in that. And it wasn't about my reputation or being embarrassed, but I need to care more about what I'm teaching my daughter than what other people think of me as a parent or a school counselor. So I said, okay, I said I would experiment with these love and logic tools, so I'm gonna do it. So I did it, didn't seem to be effective at all, right? Because she had this whole temper tantrum. You always have another time to do it again, right? You always go to the grocery store, so you go again, and I just let the girls do their thing, and of course, my one sits in a spot, which she doesn't really care where, and my older one wants to sit there again. So I gave her the same choices. Do you want to sit here or up top? And it was like, oh my goodness. She just went and sat down in the car without a word. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. I'm like, oh my goodness, this does work, you know. But it's not easy. You have to do the hard work in order to teach the lesson. So I just want you to know I've been there, okay? So here's some examples. Would you like to wear your coat, carry it? Would you like to clean the garage or mow the lawn? We have these chores done tomorrow, or do you want an extra day? Let them choose the vegetable if you want them to eat a vegetable, right? So lots of little choices. One thing, okay, so here's another example. So now my girls are older, right? So they come home from college, and the 3 of them are all sitting in the living room, and I'm in the kitchen getting ready for dinner. And what I want to say is like, guys, you're all just sitting in the living room, and I'm slaving away in the kitchen. That's what I want to say, right? And do I have every right to say that? I do have every right, but my long-term goal is that I have a lifelong relationship with my girls, right? That's my ultimate goal. So I said, well, you know, I always use choices. So I said, hey girls, would any of you like to help me with dinner, or do you want to help with the cleanup? And 2 of them said, oh, I'll help with you with dinner. Popped up off the couch and came and helped. The other one said, I'll do the cleaning. It's like, great. And so then I give some more choices. Do you want to do the salad, or do you want to prep the dessert? And just do lots of little choices. And it's like, now are we still we have this happy mood in our home, right? Would it have been much different if I would have said, girls, I'm in here slaving away and you don't even notice? Like, could you help me out? How do you think that whole memory would have been in the kitchen? Much different, right? But all I did is like give them some choices to show them to be aware that I'm cooking and I need some help, right? So whether they're older or they're younger, choices can really avoid those power struggles and build relationship, okay? Okay, so we're gonna take a look. We're gonna do a couple more videos and we're gonna look at choices. Any questions on choices? Does it kind of make sense? This is the right one. You guys are a quiet group.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, I know you said you don't care who has the red or blue cup, but my kids really care. Who gets the
Is there a certain special one?
right? So what would be a strategy for helping them with the choices between each other?
Yeah. Who would like the cup on Tuesday and who'd like it on Wednesday?
Okay.
Would you like a Tuesday, Wednesday? Yeah. So you can change the choices so that.
They're just taking the turns with it? Okay.
Yeah. Definitely. Good question. Because sometimes you look at choices like, how is that going to work? Yeah.
The power struggle between each other is different.
Yep, it is. Yeah. Okay, deposits into the account. We're going to take a look at this.
Well,
Can you guys hear
doing a
okay?
workshop one time with a bunch of parents talking about choices. And I was talking about the fact that you don't try to give choices when you're upset with a kid. What you do is, you do it like a bank account. You know, you give little choices when everything's going really well, and you're feeling comfortable, and it's easy to think them up, and nothing's going wrong, and you make tiny little deposits into the account every time you give a kid a choice, like it's a control account, and you build that up. Lots and lots of little choices, never big ones that affect anybody else, because kids have a lot of choices they can make about things that don't affect anybody else, right? And then when you get that account built up, you can take a withdrawal. And a withdrawal sounds like, aren't I usually pretty reasonable? Don't I usually let you decide things when I can? I do, don't I? Well, it's my turn this time. Thanks for understanding. Okay? And then we make the big decisions that want to affect other people. A woman came up to me after the workshop and she said, Jim, you are so naive. I said, oh really? Tell me about that. She said, yes, you're naive. You think that control is control is control. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, you think a kid is just as happy with a little choice as he is with a big choice. Now, what's your thought, audience? See, the issue, that's true, because the issue is not how big the choice is, it's whether or not I get bossed around. That's the issue, right? Kids are just as happy with a little choice as a big one, just as long as they can say, oh, I get to decide. And so I said, yeah, I believe that that's right. Little choices do it. She said, so any little choice might serve as a deposit? I said, yeah. She said, well, how about this one? You want to wear red socks or blue socks? Would that be a deposit? What do you think, audience? Yes. You want to put your pants on first or your shirt on first? Yeah. Do you want juice or milk? What about if you say, hey, drink your milk, and then the kid says no, and then you say juice or milk? Yeah, sound like a wimp now, right? Yeah, okay. Well, she said, how about this? Do you want to go to your room with your feet touching the ground or not touching the ground? What do you think? I said, yeah, it sounds like you got it. She said, well, what about this? Would you like to eat what's at the dinner table, or would you rather wait till breakfast and see if you like that better? She had a friend with her. Have you ever met these people who always want to make everything their problem? This lady is, oh, sure. Then the kid's going to be hungry. Then she's going to be whining. Then she's going to be carrying on. Then it's going to be your problem because you're going to be miserable. This person turns around and says, get a life. I heard this lecture. If that kid wants to give me a hard time, I'll just call up Mabel, the babysitter from hell. She can come over there. The kid can pay her to listen to that. I'm going to the movies. Think she's getting it? I said, I think you've got it. She said, and if I do that, little tiny choices like that, build up the savings account, then I can boss my kids around? I said, yes. Because do we have an obligation to boss kids around from time to time, yes or no? Absolutely. I said, all right. She said, well, this is really disappointing. I said, why? She said, I have to go home and apologize to my husband. What? I've been calling him a wimp. I don't know how many times I've said to that man, be a man, for crying out loud, stand up to those kids and tell them what to do. Get sick and tired of all this you decide stuff. Of course, she didn't say stuff, but it had a similar initial consonant. She said, always around giving all these choices. She said, after your lecture tonight, I figured out something. He's a master of the savings account approach. Now I understand why the kids behave so much better for him than they do for me. He's always sneaking around the house, trying to get these free deposits. Yeah, I saw him the other night. Right in the middle of their favorite television show, he stands up and says, okay, turn off the TV, time to go to bed. Oh no, the show's not over. We want to see the end of the show. Can't we see the end of the show? And he gets real tough. He puts his hands on his hips and he says, look, do you guys want to go to bed right now? Or do you want to wait till this show's over? Which is it? And they said, well, we want to wait till it's over. And he said, well, you got to decide things like that. It's important. Did he get a free deposit out of the account, into the account there? Yeah. So after the show's over, he gets some more deposits. See, we want to pile these up and pile them up, right? So he says, guys, do you want a drink of water before you go to bed? Oh yeah, gotta have water, He said, okay, you're gonna have to decide again. You want kitchen water or bathroom water? Which is it? And then they had to decide, did they want it in a cup or in a glass? They had to decide about straw or no straw. Do you want a piggyback ride to your room or do you want to walk on your own? They wanted a piggyback ride. He said, good decision. See how he keeps using those words and throwing those in there? And then he said, now, you going to bed with a story or without a story? And they said, story, we got to have a story. He said, good decision. He read them a story. They had a great time. And when the story was over, he thought about giving them some more choices. But these deposits that he's given, are they good just for tonight in this situation, or will they last for a while? Which is it? They'll last, absolutely. So might as well get some more. Okay, you want to go to bed with the light on, light off. Door open, door shut, covers on, covers off, and music on, music off. By about now, they said, but we don't want to go to bed now. We want to be up with you. We love you. And that's when he took his withdrawal from the account. Wait a minute. Who's been making all the decisions around this house tonight? You guys, right? Don't I get a turn once in a while? Thanks for understanding. Go to bed.
All right, again, choices that you are comfortable with. So I probably would not do that string of choices before bed because I wouldn't want to start that habit before bed. But you would want to just throughout the day pick choices where you can give a lot of deposits. So when it is time for bed, then you don't have to do it. He's just giving that as an example of all the different choices you can do before bed. So, okay. Now, this is one of my favorites. I'm going to switch back over here. Jim Fay tells a story about choices that were put on him.
Now, do we have to watch this video or do we have a choice to watch another video?
Oh, good idea. Would you like to watch this video or I don't have another one.
You can watch it with your eyes open
Or not.
See, Sue, you're picking up.
Nice. Should I just listen to it or watch it? Yeah, so we're with choices too. Remember, it takes the kid away from fighting with you and thinking, okay, what is the better choice? It kind of messes with their brain because they're like, oh yeah, I got to make sure I make the right choice, right? And so instead of fighting with us, they're thinking. That's where we want them, thinking. Get these kids a thinking.
I had to figure out how to avoid these traffic tickets.
Sorry, it's not very good.
Who is a wise person that I could consult with?
It's just on YouTube.
Then I thought about my brother who runs Fay Engineering, and they recreate automobile accidents and plane accidents and stuff. Wise.
Sweet Pepper smart speakers get 29 minutes more restful sleep per night. Visit sweetpepper.com to shop now.
Okay. That's what you get for YouTube and having it sitting open all that time.
This guy.
Hopefully we won't have too many of
my
those.
story. Now listen to his non-empathetic response. Well, you got 100 hours of graduate level psychology. You think you'd find one thing in there you could use in the real world. What he didn't know is that I took a course specially designed on how to respond to stupid statements like that. It's all about how you you don't misunderstand what they say, you misunderstand the reason they said it. It'll put them on their ear, right? So I said, oh, good idea. I never thought about that. There's got to be an answer in psychology. Thank you. Thought to myself, straighten him out. Then I got to thinking, what if he's right? So I went to talk to my friend, Dr. Foster Cline, the great psychiatrist. And we talked about personalities and how they match up to jobs. And do people in different kind of walks of life have different views of life? Yes or no? Now, does a psychologist have a little different view of life than, say, an engineer? Does an engineer have a little different view of life than a lawyer? Okay, does a lawyer have a different view of life than a social worker? Yeah. And a policeman, what is their typical view of life? Let me give you two choices. Tell me which one. One choice is their view of life is people want to do good, but they make mistakes from time to time because they get absent-minded and we need to help them out. Or is it people want to get by with stuff and we have to catch them before they do? Which is it? So based on that, came up with a wonderful technique. Please do not try this. I'm not going to give you all the components of the process. But I'll tell you this, when I get stopped now, I can come across like the most absent-minded old dude you have ever seen in your life. So I'm thankful I'm being stopped, otherwise I could probably hurt myself out here driving like this. Thank you. 11 warning tickets in a row in the state of Colorado where I live, on a roll, yeah. And then make horrible mistake. Exceed the speed limit in the state of Texas where they must train them different. I had a big old Texas state trooper put my moves on me so fast, I couldn't put my moves on him. He made mincemeat out of me out there on the highway. He gets out of that car, great big old grin on his face, big old head. Hey, Colorado license plate, I bet you're on a trip. He said, where are you going? I said, well, going down to Florida. Haven't seen my kids in a while. He said, oh, I bet that explains it. He said, I bet you were anxious to get there, huh? Yeah, I was kind of anxious to get there. Why? He said, well, I'll tell you why I stopped you. He said, this is such a bummer. He said, the radar's at 73 miles an hour. He said, now that wouldn't be all that bad, but this is a 55-mile-an-hour speed. He said, and when it gets that bad, I got to write you all a ticket. And don't feel bad. He said, you don't have to go back to the county seat and deal with it. I know you were thinking about that. But he said, the state gives me this letter that I get to give to you. And he said, look at it. It'll outline all the choices that you have in this matter. And he says, look at that first choice right there, back to Vernon. It's about 15 miles. You pay the fine, it's over with. You never have to think about it again. Then he starts to sound like your school counselor. But I'm wondering if the second one might be a little better for you. Because I'm sure you're anxious to see your kids. You probably don't want to go back. And it just says, try not to worry about this for a couple of weeks. Oh yeah, he said, just put it out of your mind. And then sometime when you have a little time on your hand, read through there's this little box and match up the speed and the fine. And then you know how much money to send us. And look at all the choices they provide there. See, they're right there, all the choices. See, they will accept, see, certified checks, cashier's checks, money orders, and cash. It's really up to you. And he turns that over. He says, you know, there's a third choice. A lot of people feel a need to contest these tickets. He said, so on the backside, look there, they've outlined all the steps in contesting the ticket. If you choose that, see, step 1, step 2. He said, you all might want to think a lot about that before you do anything. And look how he lays on a little more empathy on me before he leaves. He said, sure understand a car like this one getting away from me in these long stretches of highway. He said, these big, powerful cars, these straight roads, they get them all the time. Now you all have a good trip, won't you? Y'all come back, you hear? And I'm going back to my car and I'm saying to myself, I trained that guy. I get back in the car and say, I can't believe what I just did out there. Shirley, guess what I did? She said, what? I said, can you believe I just got through thanking him for the crummy ticket? That's what I did. But this guy had my head whirling. I'm saying to myself, am I going back to Vernon? No, I'm going down to Florida. Wait a minute. Maybe I can contest it. Oh, you can't contest it. I wonder if they rat on you. I wonder if I'm going to pay a fine. I wonder if what's going to happen to my insurance? I'm too busy to put my moves on him. And what about my relationship with him? My respect for him, still pretty high? Yeah. I haven't sent him flowers yet. Would you guess he gets a lot less tired out there on the job than the people who try to force their way through? And the techniques that I've given you today, easy to learn, would you agree? Yeah. Work when we remember them, yes? Change our lives?
All right, so choices. So that's going to be the other tool that you're going to experiment with. So if you know of situations that is always kind of a power struggle, right? You sit down before that, you know that, I mean, those are going to always happen. Sit down and start thinking about what could be some choices that you could lead with when you know you're going, like before bedtime or going somewhere or getting ready or whatever it might be. Sunday morning always seems to be a hectic morning. Think of some choices ahead of time that you can offer your kids so that you can rattle those. And feel free to write them down and have them right here going, okay, like have the cheat sheet. I had that for a while too, like writing things down so I could remember what's my empathy statement. What are those choices? And as you can see, these are not just for kids. This is like human behavior, right? It's like raising the odds with connecting with people and working with people. We all love choices. We love to know that someone is empathizing with us, right? Instead of getting angry at us. So these are just basic people skills that we can use in all scenarios, like this police officer. Okay, one last tool that you're going to want to use and try is one-liners. So that's the last handout on your table. We want to neutralize arguments. Do kids have a way of getting into arguments just like that, just real quickly, and all of a sudden you're like, how in the world did we get here? Kids love to hook us in, right? They like to use our words and get us into that argument, because that's where they feel like they get their power, just like we would too in a debate or a conversation where we're kind of craving that control. But hopefully by using some choices, you will lessen that. But when you need to just get out of that, we have these one-liners, especially when a consequence is given. A lot of times we have all that back talk and complaining and whining and griping, and how do we address that, right? So here's a list of one-liners, and I probably used I know all the time. So that's not fair, I know. But so-and-so, I know. Well, why can't we, I'm sorry you feel that way. So, but it's always sometimes like, I know, or sometimes I say, I don't know, you know, sometimes I just play dumb. I just don't know. But the goal is that you don't get into the argument with them, because it just feeds the arguing, okay? And then I added, my other favorite one is we would always say, I love you too much to argue. And I really do. I really, you know, you can be really genuine with that. I just love you too much to argue. Okay. And sometimes we have to then add on, and what did I say? And then walk away. We gotta do some walking away and use less words, okay? It was actually kind of fun my girls hate that line because they heard all the time. But what was fun was they started saying it to each other. So when they get into an argument, they go, I love you too much to argue. You know, it wasn't as genuine, but at least I knew they were hearing what I was saying. And So you want to find one that kind of fits for you again. Again, you could just use empathy, you know, bummer, how sad, or thanks for sharing that. I bet that's true. You know, some kids, even high schoolers, can really ratchet up to, you know, some really hurtful things, you know, when they're angry. And you can just say, thanks for sharing that with me. Nice try. Sometimes my girls would come up with some really creative little arguments that, like, nice try, that's a good one. And then we'd all start laughing, you know. They know that they're just trying to get you. So the whole goal is just to kind of stay out of it and have a statement of that you can just kind of stay out of it and not add more fuel to the fire. Okay? So those are your 3 experiments this week. So I'm excited to hear next week what your empathy statement is, what choices you tried, and if you needed to use some one-liners. Just make it really simple. Don't make it complex. Just start small. 1 empathy statement, 1 one-liner, a couple choices, and then come back and let's talk about it. It's really good to hear other people's experiences so we can learn from one another, even the ones that don't go well, because we learn from those as well. So any questions? And I'm really amazed that we made it. Any questions or thoughts? We have just a couple minutes.
I got a question.
Yeah.
This, what you say, choices. I raised my kids, tell them what I expect, and then work from there. Because if you just do choices, your employer's not going to say, okay, John, do you want to do this or this? Or the school's not going to say this and this. There has to be, you can't just teach your kid by choices all the time, I don't think.
Right, and so, but what we're trying to do is to avoid any of those power struggles that happen. So we just want to give our kids more control, basically. And when they're young, it's hard to have much control, right? Because you're making a lot of decisions. So you're allowing them to practice making decisions, okay? So really the goal of that is, 1, they're learning how to make decisions, they're learning how to problem solve, and they're learning how to work as a family, because we're gonna all work together in this. And then there's gonna be times that you're like, okay guys, we have something we need to do, and let's go do it now, okay? Or I need you to go do this. So the choices are gonna help raise the odds that when you do have to tell them to go do something, then they're more likely to do it, because you have given them that sense of control and contribution to it. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think...
And it's much different the way you probably raised your kids.
We just sat down, we had expectations.
Yeah, and
you know, if it didn't work, then okay, what do you think we should do about it?
Yeah.
I mean, I did give them choices, but
they were a part of the conversation, though?
Always.
Yeah. So
I asked them one time, I don't know anymore what to do. What are we gonna do to fix this?
Perfect. And that's exactly it. We want them to feel a part of the family, that they contribute, that they can make decisions with the family. And next week we're gonna talk about problem solving. And that would be exactly what a Love and Logic parent would say, is that we have something we need to deal with. What are your ideas? And let them be a part of that. Because when they get to this point up here, we want them to have lots of practice of doing things and making decisions, right? Making mistakes and trying things out. So the whole cup thing too. And if you didn't want to own that, then you can throw that back at the kids and say, what are we gonna do? There's one cup that everybody wants. What can we do? And it's amazing when you throw it back at kids, what they would come up with. Oh, we could rock, paper, scissors. We could, you know, but it gets them thinking and problem solving. And then what does that do to our kids' self-esteem when they solve a problem or they contribute in a positive way?
It builds them.
Oh, it totally does. That's how self-esteem grows, is by being able to be a problem solver and work through those things. Yeah. Okay. Good question. Okay. All right, well, we'll see you next week then. Bring your friends.
Thank you.